Her Journey to Healing, Reaching Women with a Desperate Cry is an 8-week Zoom seminar in which Kamala and Winston help women to start living their best life by rediscovering the image of God in their life. Kamala, a licensed marriage and family therapist, joins her husband of 16 years, an ordained pastor, to marry the clinical and the spiritual. You will begin living your best life filled with love, joy, and peace. Register at kwministries.net for this life-changing seminar.
So anxious resistant. So remember there were 4 categories, right? Mm-hmm. So anxious resistant kids were on the opposite end of the spectrum. They didn't have a lot of self-confidence. They really clung to their caregivers, whether it's parents. When I say caregivers, I mean parents, grandparents, just old people in their lives who were, really part of that initial bonding experience. For these kids, they tended to have really exaggerated emotional reactions to stuff, but they also kept the distance from their peers. How did this translate into adulthood? That translated into anxious, preoccupied adults. Mm-hmm. And so they kind of formed less secure bonds with partners and feel really desperate for love and affection.
God is patient. God is kind. God is long-suffering. God never fails. God always hopes. God always trusts. God always perseveres. God doesn't envy. God doesn't boast. God doesn't seek his own, but is always seeking what's best for you. God rejoices in the truth.
That's right.
God doesn't define love. God demonstrates love.
Good evening and welcome back to Monday Night with KW. We are so excited to be here yet again, another Monday evening with all of you viewers. It's Celebration Monday, and on Celebration Monday, we try to make sure that we are doing something to celebrate on a day that typically we tend to think of as, oh, it's another Monday. But today we're celebrating. We just came off of a glorious Mother's Day weekend. The celebrations were wonderful all across social media. My own celebration was pretty snazzy, I can't even lie. So I'm really excited about having had a great day. And Monday has been made better because of it. If you're joining us for the very first time, we want to welcome you to Monday Night Live. And we want to tell you a little bit about our background, where we're coming from. So here on KW Ministries, our whole thing is connecting people with people. Through my husband and I's own personal experiences, we were able to realize that one of the things that has come up for us is just our own challenges, our own experiences. And through those experiences, we have learned that we need to connect with people. We have learned that sometimes a little vulnerability goes a long way. And to that end, we have had this Monday night program that we have just been talking with so many people who have shared with us their stories, their experiences, and how their experiences have really taken them through life's journey. The journey towards healing is never a journey that necessarily means that we're all there. That's not the point. The point is that we are all able to experience something and learn from each other. So I want to give the opportunity right now for those of you who are logging on to jump over for a quick second to our website. That is www.kwministries.net. That is where you will find so many of our great products. We've got devotionals, we've got books, we've got digital media. We have got a Journey to Healing seminar that you can take online if you're interested in learning about God's vision for you and your life. So we invite you to take a quick look at our website, learn a little bit about what we're here, what we're about, and maybe bless somebody else with that too. As we get together on Monday nights, one of the things that we love to do is give away some gifts. And how you become a winner, if you're on the show with us tonight, is that you're going to comment, you're going to share, you're going to like stuff, you're going to ask questions, and every single time we see your name pop up on our comment stream, that puts you in the runnings for a great gift. So we invite you to share alongside us as we get ready to jump into the conversation with none other than Pastor Christian Lawson. And I'm really excited about tonight for a couple of reasons. One, it's another opportunity for us to really hear about somebody else's experience through life and how they're going through it and learn from them. But it's also something that's really near and dear to my heart. Pastor Lawson is going to be talking with us about his journey through living with Crohn's disease, which is close to our hearts because our daughter also has that condition. And she actually wrote a book, if you check out our website, all about her journey with that. So I'm really excited to hear from Pastor Lawson tonight as he's getting ready to join us. So without further ado, because we never like to leave things until way down in the program for people to be like, what are we talking to this person? No, we're going to bring Pastor Lawson in right now so we can get started with this conversation. Hello, sir.
Hey, how are you?
I am doing well. It is such a pleasure to have you on our program on this Monday night.
Thank you for having me. And I'm grateful to be on this live stream. I've heard so much about it and happy to share my story and my journey through the process.
Awesome. No, I'm saying awesome because you're sharing your experience, but I'm pretty certain that not all aspects of your experience are going to be awesome. I'm sure when you were going through them, they were not so awesome. So
No.
I want to go ahead and kind of get us started kind of at the beginning. Um, when were you first diagnosed?
Well, I was first diagnosed with Crohn's disease when I was 8 years old. Um, I had been experiencing it's kind of happened very, it was a very different experience for me, honestly. Um, I started to have some mobility challenges after a bike accident that happened at my aunt's house. We didn't understand exactly what was going on, exactly what was happening. We just thought that, oh, Christian just hurt himself. And that's what I
Mhm.
believed. So went back and forth to doctors trying to figure out what was going on, what was happening. And, got the normal cast, got the normal cast on my right arm, left leg, that kind of
Mhm.
situation. And suffer with some mobility challenges. Um, but then eventually I started getting worse and worse and still having some stomach issues, stomach pain. And so it was just like we need to get a further study done to really see exactly what's happening.
Let me
And
ask you real
after,
quick before you go further, Pastor. So you
Mhm.
said it started off with mobility issues, and from what I know about Crohn's, that initial presentation can take lots of different directions. Could you define for our viewers when you say mobility issues, what exactly was happening?
so and that's a really great question. Like I mentioned, I fell, I had a bike accident. So of course I had a normal cast on, but I also had a struggle to really put one foot in front of the other and really get up
Mm,
and get into bed and, get out of bed. At the time I was attending a private school, and the private school had stairs. So getting up and down the stairs for classes it was just a difficult journey. Everything was just an exhausting journey. So I suffer with mobility issues, um, with getting in around the house, really doing just simple tasks that any 8-year-old kid should be able to do. I wasn't able
mhm.
to do it.
That's interesting. And so then, how long was this time period between, first noticing these mobility issues, and then you kind of mentioned that, from there it progressed to other symptoms?
Um, Honestly, I would say maybe over the span of a couple months. I don't really remember, only because everything just kind of feels like it was a blur almost. And I should be smiling, but it was just all of it was just jam packed together. So it's kind of hard for me to really actually remember what position or what point all of those things happen. Good to see you, Pastor.
Mhm.
And so once we really got it wasn't until we were just like, you know what, it doesn't make any sense. That's when my parents decided, hey, we're gonna go and take him to a children's hospital, figure out exactly what's going on. And then after a week of spending some time there, that's when they ran a series of tests and determined that I did have Crohn's disease. Now, I've never heard of Crohn's disease, never had any family members that had Crohn's disease. um, my my I'd say my DNA background that's composed of both sides of my family. There were heart disease, a lot of genetic stuff, diabetes, um, but never Crohn's disease. So I was the
Mhm.
first one to kind of break the ice with something that none of the family has ever heard of. And in
Mhm.
studying and learning about the disease, you meet a lot of white colleagues, white individuals who have it, but you never really meet a lot of black individuals, especially people like me,
Mhm.
who or minorities who have something like this.
What goes through the mind of an 8-year-old who hears that they have this condition that nobody has ever heard of in this family?
Mm. Uh, what goes through the mind of an 8-year-old, especially coming from such a religious background, is why me? Why me? I'm the church going kid, always been in, Christian education. But why do I have to go through this pain? Why do I have to go through this suffering? Um, I think the hardest thing was just really having faith that God would take me through it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
even though I crossed that bridge of, well, I'm here at this point. I don't know what you're doing, God, but I know that I'm gonna trust you, and I know that this is not always how things will be for me.
Mm-hmm.
That hard faith move took years to really get to, and even now, in moments when you do get sick, it's just like, dang, like why is it that I'm at the brink of something that I'm always getting sick or I'm always dealing with the ailment,
Mm-hmm.
instead of living my best life like everybody else is. And especially harder when you're going through days where you're living with so much pain each and every single day, and you don't even know how to articulate to family and friends exactly how it feels,
Mm-hmm.
because there's no way to describe it. It's lonely. It's
Yeah.
uh, it's where a lot of you get into your mental illness and your anxiety and your depression gets very bad because you don't know how to inform the ones that you love because you don't want them to stress out. But then not only do
Mm-hmm.
you not want them to stress out, you just don't want it to be um, bothersome. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, a lot of times with my parents, I didn't want to bother them. I didn't want to tell them because I felt like if I tell them, they'll start stressing or it'll cause more pressure onto them. And I'd rather just fight it on my own and with
Mm-hmm.
God's help, of course.
Did we show the video already?
Not yet.
Okay, let's show this video real quick, Christian. Not the furthest one on the screen, and
Oh, this one? Yeah, I can click it.
okay.
I can. I think I can present
Well,
it.
I'll get
I
it in
don't
there.
know. Maybe you might have to do it on your end.
Middle school, this is Christian. Sorry, I couldn't make it. Be strong and of a good courage.
How old were you here?
I was 15 years old. So this was the last time that I was in the hospital. Um, so I was 66 pounds when I got into high school. Um, I was on nutritional therapy. So they had me on 6 to 7 cans of medical formula each night. And I was on a oral calorie diet of 500 calories per day. So that's the only amount of substance that I could have per mouth per day. So usually that's just like a chip or uh, somebody that's watching, it's probably like your Lay's bag of chips and maybe some water or so I was constantly counting that calorie count until eventually I just kept getting worse. The feedings weren't working, and it was all in an effort to try to make me gain weight until
Mm-hmm.
2015 came. And when 2015 came, I was sick. I couldn't go to really classes to use the bathroom. Like I couldn't do anything for myself. And I remember my mom saying, I'm going to take you to the hospital. This is going to be the last time that we're ever going to have to deal with going back and forth with doctors. I promise you. And this video here is a video that I sent because I had a speaking engagement that I was supposed to do to uh, a middle school that one of my cousins works at, and I wasn't able to make it. So they were like, "Well, let's just send a video. Have you send a video in?" And that's the video that I recorded, and that is the only really the only video that I have personally of during my time in the hospital. And this was before any treatment, any surgeries that I underwent while I was there.
You have graduated from college. Yesterday was your graduation. And before we go any further, what I wanted to do, and unfortunately, Christian, I left my phone over there. I want to put up Christian's Cash App. So tell it to us, Christian.
It's $CJ Lawson. CJ Lawson.
It's a dollar
So
sign
C
CJ Lawson.
CJ Lawson. Yeah.
Dollar sign CJ
My
Lawson.
full name.
So dollar sign CJ Lawson. There it goes. And leave it up there, please, Anne. And what we're going to do is throughout the program tonight, I just want to ask you to sow into this man's life. And I apologize. I wanted to start this at the 10, and I'm going to start it with $50.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I'm asking, please, as we go out, I see Dr. Hay on here. I don't know who else is on here because they no longer put up the names, they just put up a number. So Dr. Hay, if you could match my 50, I'd really love you. Or if you could go higher than my 50, I'd love you even more. I know Sister Remo is here. I want for us to hook up this young man real good. He has been strong. He has, and I take this personal. I don't know if my wife, if she started off that way or not, but we take this personal. As you know, our 15-year-old daughter has Crohn's, and so we take this very personal. All right, so we're going to interrupt ever so often to talk about this Cash App piece. And all right, there we go. Dr. Hayes there. Dr. Hayes matching. Good. Who else is on? Who else is on? Can you please match our 50? Thank you so much, Dr. Hayes.
Thank you guys so much. God bless each of you.
Can we please match our 50? Whoever else is on. I want to go back to talk about an 8-year-old saying, "Why me?" I want for us to explore that a little bit, Christian. Okay. You want to show that now, Christian?
Yeah, that's a picture of me when I was in I believe the 3rd grade, because I had to repeat the 3rd grade again, and this is fresh.
And you had to repeat the 3rd grade because you were in the hospital so much, so you missed a lot of school.
Correct. So this is fresh when I was fresh out of the hospital. I had they had me on steroids, so that was my first time, our family's first time really even hearing about steroids. And I was just constantly eating every 30 minutes, constantly eating because I was just hungry. And my family didn't understand that. So it was definitely multiple different stories that I could tell if we had the time, of occasions where my mom would just be like, "Boy, what are you doing?" But the question of why me, Pastor, is one of those things that I struggled with the most. And it wasn't until eventually, like a couple years later, that I really identified the reason why. And there's something another pastor told me that's always stuck with me for the rest of my life. He said, "Christian, you may not understand. Sometimes our stories are not about us, but sometimes it's about how God uses our stories for his glory." And our
now,
stories
how old were you when the pastor said that to you?
I was probably maybe about, I'd say 15 or 16. So this was like right after I had just gotten out of the hospital, after, reaching remission. That's when, I was on a spiritual retreat with my school, Atlanta Adventist Academy. And he, I was just telling him my story, and I'm just like, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand why this has all happened to me. And that's when he told me that quote.
All right, so before we go to that quote, Christian, I want for us to explore the why me, because here's the thing. A lot of us ask, why me? I remember I met a lady who was a vegetarian, who didn't eat, who made sure she ate properly, who who was very careful with her life, and she had cancer. And her question to me was, "Why me?" Sister Sands, good evening. We're collecting. We're trying to give. Anna K, can you put that cash out back up, please? We're trying to give our guests tonight a really nice graduation gift, and we have $100 so far. Thank you, and Sister Sands. So could you please cash app him $50? Sister Sands, the pastor and me is collecting offering.
Thank you so much.
Oh, nothing to be thankful for. Let's just see what we can collect tonight, and we want to give him a nice graduation gift, please. Okay, I want for us to explore, though. I don't want for us to rush it. I want for us to explore the why me, and I want for you to speak to us, and I want for you to look at your 8-year-old self right now, and tell us what your 8-year-old self is thinking. Tell us, walk us through it as much as you can remember.
Well, my 8-year-old self really just was happy to know that I had finally an answer to the question that I've been trying to figure out for a long while. And that it wasn't just me going crazy, but that I was actually experiencing this. And not saying that my parents wasn't taking me serious or what have you. It was just more so like, is all this pain and suffering something that I'm just making up in my head, or is it something that I'm actually experiencing as a physical ailment? And over the time period of really identifying that it was physical, it was just like, so why is it that I'm the only person in my family who's ever heard of this, who's ever experienced this? You know, we talked to a lot of friends of ours. Nobody really knew anything about this, and it just kind of, it was even harder because, you know, you go into the space where you go into the doctor's office, you see the doctor, but you don't see anybody who looks like you. You don't see anybody who experiences the same exact thing, is a minority. You know, you don't see any of that. Looks about your age. Everybody looks older than you. So I had a really hard time with that because I'm just like, okay, I have a diagnosis to what's going on with me, God, but at the same time, I haven't met anybody who's my age, who looks like me. So I thought I was the only black person that had something like this. And it wasn't until maybe like my teenage years that I really found people who looked like me, who were really dealing with and suffering with this disease. And I think the other layer of it was, like I mentioned before, how does somebody that comes from a very religious background end up with so much affliction? Like it just seemed.
What are some of the answers you told yourself? What are some of the answers? Tell us some of the things that came to your mind as you asked, why me?
The one of the things that came to my mind when I asked myself is these questions is, it's gonna be okay. I didn't know how it was gonna be okay. I just knew it's gonna be okay. I knew that there was so much more greater in store that God had for me, that this is just only a process, that this is just only a season. And I had a hard time, you know, when we go through affliction, it's hard to really look at it as a season. It's just like, this is just here to stay. And there were times where, you know, I wrestled with God. I'm just like, God, I don't understand this. I know what your word says. I know what Psalms 46 and verse 10 says. I know what your word says, but I don't understand. And it doesn't match up with my situation. So it was an inner struggle. Even though I had the answer, it was just like, I still couldn't put it all together to give myself the satisfaction to know that I was going to be okay. And it got to the point where when people would say cliche things like God's going to heal you, it's just like, but you don't understand the present affliction that I'm dealing with. You know, I related to a lot with Paul and how he talks about the thorn in his flesh, you know, and it's constantly, every time he wants to do something, it's constantly restraining him, it's constantly restricting him. And it just kind of felt like that for me, like, you know, in a winning season where, you know, I thought my next chapter was going to come for so many things in my life. That's when I had affliction and I had to take time off from school, or I had to, you know, go back home and live with my parents, or, you know, I had to um, catch back up in classes. All of those different areas just like pushed me back. And it was hard to really look at my friends and say, hey, like, I know that it looks bad for me right now, but stay encouraged. My friends were the type of people that were just like, man, like, I don't know what he's going through, but I'm just gonna pray for him, you know. I'm just gonna lift him up in prayer. And so a lot of the relationships that I have today, with friends in high school or either middle school while I was there, a lot of them really didn't understand what I was struggling with until later on when I told them, or either when there was a conversation that happened in class where I brought it up and discussed it, and really rose an awareness to it, because it was something that you never heard of, especially for me being a Black person coming from a pretty good area of town, a pretty good area of Atlanta. Like I said, you know, family has genetic stuff that happens, but I was the first person to have this, so it was definitely difficult for sure.
Yeah. I hear throughout this whole process that you're grappling, you're going back and forth, kind of back and forth. But there's a piece that I've kept hearing you say over and over, is that it came back to having this faith. And my question about that was, where did you
Yeah.
learn that?
Especially at that young age,
Yeah.
where do you learn that it's going to be okay?
Um, and this is gonna really sound very, very horrible, but it really comes from a place of peace. And in that place of peace, and this is how I internalized it for me. And if for somebody else it might be a different struggle. I knew for me, I could not cry anymore. So at that point, I have to pray. You know, and what people don't understand is, when I used to come home from school, I would just get in a fetal position and I would just sob because of the pain, because of all the things that I was experiencing. But at one point and another, I had to wake up and realize, listen, like, I can't handle this anymore. But at the same time, God is allowing me to go through this painful purpose in order to use my story for his glory.
Right. But
And
at
I
age
have to be.
12, you didn't know I'm going through this painful story. And by the way, Annika, hashtag that. I'm going through this painful story to use it for God's glory. So take us to your 8-year-old language. Dr. Hayes says, I teach this disease process, and it's so interesting to hear his perspective as a percentage of Blacks is extreme. Yes, it is very, 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 very low. Tell me, you're able to articulate that now.
Mhm.
What Kamala is trying to pull out of you is, where did that idea that it's going to be okay come from? How did you?
I guess it was from my parents, from particularly my mom, especially. Um, but it like I mentioned before, the hardest thing for me was shutting her out. Even though I heard her verbally say this to me, it was also like I had to identify that for me,
Yeah,
that I was going to be okay.
yeah,
Right.
And that what I had heard, what I had learned, what I had learned and discovered about religion, and heard through church and heard through all these different spiritual activities, was definitely what I needed to me for me. So I had to develop my own relationship with God. And that's where my prayer life was strengthened. And that's where I began to really trust in God. That's when I began to really read God's word for myself and really recount of God's goodness for me and really journal for me and really talk to God and pray to God and believe to God for me. It was not a prayer for everybody else. It was a prayer for me. And I think that's the heart. Like, what people don't really understand is a lot of my journey, I've had to grow 10 times quicker than anybody else has. And it's not to knock any of my colleagues or my mentors at my age, but it's just simply to say that, you know, I had to understand exactly what the process looks like and how to navigate this difficult space of, yes, I am an adolescent, but at the same time I have to have faith, just like all the adults in my life have to have faith. You know, it's necessary that I go through the season of having unrealistic faith and just really believe in God that he's going to do far more than what I can even ask or think. And that to me was really hard. I knew that there was a dream. I knew that there was a vision that God had for my life. But I knew also at the same time that if I gave up and not go through with the vision, that it would not allow others to be able um to see what God had did through me.
Right, right.
And like you said, that was not something that I internalized at 8. It was just a process that I had to internalize over time. But at the same time, I knew I had a dream. And I knew God gave me a purpose. And he spoke to me. He said, even though you're in this moment of affliction, it does not mean that you will always be in a season of affliction. And so that's how you have to really turn things around. Like, you know, a lot of times I know people struggle with things, and I'm not saying that your physical ailments are something to neglect. No, get help, seek help, do what you need to do. But at the same time, there comes a moment where you as a believer have to say, I got to have faith in God. I can't keep on crying about this situation. Yes, the pain hurts. Yes, the suffering hurts. But at the same time, I have to lay it in God's hands and be okay with that, but also pray for deliverance. And sometimes, you know, I had people that said, well, maybe you might not never get delivered. Then how do you feel if that happens? You know, it was those difficult moments where you had people that were for you, and then you also had people that were just like counting it all joy and saying, well, maybe you're going to always be in this condition.
That was good stuff. How did you, as a child, depend on others as you went through this? How did you, so for example, how did you depend on your schoolmates? How did you depend on your parents? How did you, as a child, depend on others as you went through this?
How did I depend on others? I really just depended on others to really pray for me. I needed more prayer more than anything. Like I said, it was hard, and I didn't want to overwhelm anybody to really stress them out with, you know, some day-to-day activities. Um, I depended upon my mom for sure, especially when I first got diagnosed, because she was there to really assist me. Um, this lady sacrificed so much, so many years to make sure that I was okay. There was a season where my mom wasn't working at all because she took off a leave of absence just to make sure I was taken care of. And she would just make sure I had everything that I needed each and every single day. But not only just make sure I had everything that I needed, but also prayed for me and really shifted my mindset to be more positive about the whole situation instead of me always being so negative and so down and out. Um, I saw a lot of pain in her eyes, and it's hard as a black boy to see your mom with so much pain in her eyes. But I really depended upon her. She was very, very strong. My mom's a very, very strong prayer woman. And that's what I appreciate about her. Um, when it came down to my immediate family, my dad and my brother were definitely supportive of the journey and were definitely helpful. But in a school environment and in a work environment or what have you, whatever setting I was walking into, um, I just asked for prayers, and that's what me and my family did. We just asked that people relied upon people to pray for me, to pray for my healing, and to pray that God would allow His will to be done. Sometimes we have to be okay with knowing that sometimes God allows us to go through suffering. Um, like I said earlier, for his glory, but not only for his glory, but to allow other people to know that it's not us doing it on our own. It's really just him keeping me, and maybe the deliverance might not come in this season of life. But at the same time, I had a blessed assurance in knowing that God is still in control, and that if I did go to sleep in Christ, that I would be able to, the next voice that I hear God coming through the clouds of glory. And that concept is very hard for an 8-year-old little boy to understand, because you have people that are praying for deliverance and that believe that you'll be completely healed. But then you also have some people that believe that you'll constantly deal with this and that you might lose your life in dealing with this process. And at least you will be able to hear God's voice, at the next at the trumpet sound. But it was just like believing for myself that God was going to take care of me. It was definitely a hard process, and really trusting that people were praying for me
Christian,
was hard.
I want to ask you. I want to come back to a child looking in the eyes of death, which you just spoke about. But I want to go back to something else first. So, when my daughter, how we found out that my daughter was in pain, it was pure coincidence. She was losing 5 pounds per week. We walked in. Dr. Hay has a really good question that I'm going to follow up with right after I ask you this. Um, we walked into the room. She's losing 5 pounds per week, so we're now concerned. We walk into the room, and I stretched out my hand to hold her, and she jumped.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, are you in pain?
Mm-hmm.
And then she told us that she was in pain. And she had been in pain. She would then say, I have learned to live with this pain. Why didn't you tell anybody? Because I don't want you to worry. I hear that same theme in what you're saying.
Yeah.
Here's my question. What is it? Why was it so important to you that people not worry? Where did that, help me articulate that question?
That's a really good way that you're putting it. Just the idea of where did you get that, the need, the desire,
The
to
need,
shield
just
people
right.
from what you were going through.
Right.
I think the need that I or where did I get that concept from is just by simply seeing how stressed it was for my mom to hear that I had this disease and there was nothing that she could do about it. There's no amount of money that she can change the situation. There's no amount of how many times she prays that she can really change this thing. there was nothing that she could do humanly possible. And so, therefore, my instant notation based off of being in church all of my life is, why worry about it when we believe and when we say all of this time, cast all our cares, cast all of our anxiety upon God, and He will care for you. For me, as a boy, my mom taught me to cast my cares. And she said, just cast it on God. I don't know what your cares are, what you're going through, but cast those cares onto God. And when she told me that, that brought me freedom, because even though I was dealing with affliction, I knew that the affliction could not control what God's purpose was for my life.
Hold on. Hashtag. Even though I was dealing with affliction, I knew that the affliction could not control God's purpose for my life. Hashtag. Even though I was dealing with affliction, I knew the affliction could not control God's purpose for my life. That's good. That's good. Go ahead.
So even though the affliction could not control God's purpose for my life, I also knew that for me, I needed to not to worry, because I needed to know that if God created me, how is it, why would I doubt that He is capable of taking care of me? And that, to me, like, if I don't really trust God as the master and creator and maker of me, then that just basically says, God, I don't really know you. But at the same time, like, it's very hypocritical for me, honestly.
No, not hypocritical. It's a struggle.
Right, it's a struggle, but at the same time, it's like, how do I say this? It's like I pray and I say I believe, but then at the same time, it's like I do something different. And I know it's human nature. I get it. But at the same time, I also know, for me, that I need to really walk by faith and live out what I believe, and not only just live out what I believe, but also believe that God has a master plan. And that's the hardest thing to see in the moment of a struggle, is that there's a
Exactly.
master plan in store. Um, so even though we might plan our course of life through our heads, that does not mean that it will always go that way. And every single time I have tried to plan my life out, God has always kicked me down to the curve and said, "This is not what I had planned for you." I'm serious. I'm just being honest. Okay. So I'll tell you this, right? I just recently, like you mentioned, Pastor graduated from Oakland University over the course of this weekend. Praise God.
And we're
But
collecting $50. We're
but
collecting. Hold on, I'm coming, Christian. There's a cash app up there. $ CJ Lawson. Would you please match Elder Hay? Christian, I know. Tell me, what have you seen? How much do you have in there now?
I
Let me
have
see.
150 right now. So Elder Hay
Oh,
just
praise
sent me some
God.
money, $100. Thank you, Elder.
Oh well, Dr. Hay did. Dr. Hay did 100. We did 50, so we have 150. We need to get this to 200. I don't know who else on, so I don't know. We need to get this to 200. So please work with us. We want to get this to 200. This young man has gone through a great struggle, a great ordeal, and has graduated from Oakwood University on this weekend. And
Yes.
we didn't plan this. When we asked him to come on, we didn't plan this. And today, as I was praying and I was talking to the Lord, I just felt led that we needed to do this for him. So let's
Thank you.
please, somebody else please add another 50, 25. We don't. I'm saying 50, but if all you can do is 25, we're glad to take it. If you can just do 20, we're glad to take it. I hope Julie Cropper is on. Julie's on. I know I have a 50 coming from somewhere. Okay, Christian, you were saying that
So,
God, you
like,
make these plans, and then God shows you I have another plan for you.
right. So like I said, Pastor, I had planned out how I wanted my 4 years of college to be. I said, God, this is what I want you to do in this season. This is what I want you to do in that season. So I planned my trajectory of everything that I wanted to do. But every time it seems like every time I get on the brink of something good. So in 2021, my health started to decline again. And I didn't understand why, but it was just like I had COVID. Then I had a series of abscess that I was dealing with, which for those of you who do not know what abscess are, those are just little, like, I'd say pus sockets above your skin,
Swords.
sores above your skin. Thank you, Pastor. That are very, very uncomfortable depending upon where they're placed. So mine were in a very uncomfortable place, and I was losing weight. I wasn't eating. I was very anemic. I was very, very weak because I'm on a medication where if I don't have my infusion every 8 weeks, I get really weak and I can't really do anything for myself. It's like I'm simply just like talking about walking from here to the closet that's in the back of me. I can't do that if I don't have my infusion. And so there were weeks that I didn't have my infusion because I was having these abscess and, really trying to trust God through the process, praying until finally it got to the point where I could not walk. Like July, I think, but July 5th, I could not absolutely stand out of bed by myself. Like it was that bad. I called my dad. My dad came from Atlanta. He came here. He stayed a whole 2 months with me because I just was not mobile. I couldn't drive. I couldn't walk. I couldn't use the restroom. I couldn't bathe myself. I couldn't do anything for myself. And what I discovered through that process is, like I said, I was supposed to be graduating in 2022. And so, I was happy, I was excited, I was amped up. Like I was just like, oh man, I'm just going through through a season right now. And by the time August comes, I'll be back in school. So I was telling my dean, I know it looks bad. I know the situation seems bad, but I'm gonna be okay. And that's the faith that I had. But God was like, no, that's not what my plan is for you. And so it ended up being that I had to take a semester off. And then I was supposed to come back in the spring of 2022. And so I say all that to say is when I did come back, God showed me, and he showed me over the past 3 semesters. He's like, this is why I wanted you to come back. And this is the reason that I had you come back. And it wasn't about confirmation. You. Right. It was the confirmation that I needed, but it wasn't about me, but it was about the fact that he needed to use me for his glory. Yeah. And so even though, everybody else has graduated, even though, for normal people, every graduation was just like, yeah, I did my degree. For me, it was a faith journey because the dream that I am living in right now, that dream started when I was a kid. That dream was in the mind of that 8-year-old boy that I showed you earlier. And that 8-year-old boy had heard so many people tell him that he was never going to do it, that it was never going to be done, that he would have to struggle and have to always fight to really make it work. I have faced so much opposition in my life, but I use that opposition to elevate me. I love a good challenge. I love people to tell me that I can't do something because that just means that I can come back and say, look at what God has done. Look at how you meant it to harm me, but God turned it around for my good.
Christian, let me take a quick break and we'll come right back, okay?
Yeah.
Take a quick break and we'll come right back.
Okay. There's a commercial that used to say, don't leave home without it. I think it was MasterCard. And at the end, they would say, you couldn't put a price on it. A price could not be put on what you and your wife did for us, did for me this week. And I'm just praying that your ministry will continue to be the blessing to others as it has been to me this week. Just the opening of the eyes, just seeing God's word with a whole different set of lenses, just understanding what is required of us and laying aside the misnomers, the erroneous teachings, the errors, and just accepting who I am in Christ. And no one else could tell me who I am but the Word.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for hanging out with us all week long.
Thank you for being there with us.
Right.
We have 8 minutes left, Christian. Mm-hmm. And in the 8 minutes that we have left, I'm going to ask you to speak to my daughter. I'm going to ask you to speak to my daughter, but not just to speak to my daughter. People who she doesn't know the road that's ahead of her. She doesn't know, she hasn't had abscess yet. She hasn't had, since we've left the hospital, she hasn't had, she had 2 bad months, but it was just really bathroom and cramping. But I want you to talk to her. I want you to talk to people out there, not necessarily with Crohn's, but that have bad days that are coming. I want you to have a conversation with them, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, for anybody that's going through a difficult season, that's dealing with some bad days, I just want to let you know, really, one of the people that sticks out to me so much. When I think about bad days, is Job. Job is the person that really sticks out to me, that really pushes me forward in my bad days, because the story of Job teaches us that even though the enemy might try to sniff everything out of you, sniff your joy, sniff your love, sniff your peace, sniff all of these different things out of you, that God is your supplier, that God is able to restore, that God is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all you can even ask or think. So when people come and they say things that don't really line up based off of what you've seen God do or what God's word says he's able to do, then just remind them that I'm still going to trust. Like Job said, I'm still going to believe. I'm still going to believe in the God that's created me, in the God that's made me, in the God that's formed me and known me from my mother's womb. And then I also take some characteristics from Joseph as well. Joseph identifies through his story and through his experience that what you intended to harm me, God turned it around for my good. And so God can use a painful purpose for his glory. And we see that through the story of Joseph and through the story of Job, is that they went through a painful purpose, but God was able to produce a powerful story for his glory, but not only just for his glory, but for the example for everybody else to see. So for somebody that's going through a season of bad days, I want you to know that there are people that are watching you and they're looking for your spirit. They're looking at what's driving you, what's pushing you forward. And so you have to remember the fruits of the Spirit. You have to remember how to demonstrate them. You must abide in love, must abide in peace, joy, kindness, all of those things. And not only just abide in them, but also believe for yourself that this too is going to pass, that you have to hold in assurance that God is not slack concerning his promises. The Bible says that Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. So that means he does not change. So even though me and you might be inconsistent, that God is consistent. So when I read Psalm 46 and verse 10, be still and know that I am God, I can know that God will do that for me consistently 365 days a year. However, for centuries, for generations, God has not changed. And so it's okay to believe. It's okay to cry out to God. It's okay to really lay your burdens upon him. Like he says, cast all your cares, because he wants your cares. He's like, I will take the yoke upon me and I will lift the heavy burden. So I am going to alleviate the pressure from you, and you can walk into your freedom, walk into your healing. One of the things that I relate to the most is the time period that we see in the story of John chapter 5 with the man at the pool of Bethesda. And the Bible talks about how he was waiting there in a season of transition, and he was waiting for a very long time. And what I believe happened during that time period is that he got a sense of bitterness and upset, and a little bit of frustration within him. But then not only did he have all of this bitterness and this upset and this frustration, but I also think that he had some human elements like me and you, where he had a hard time really trusting that God was able to heal him. And what I want to somebody to understand is that God is able to do exceedingly abundantly above all we can ask or think. And sometimes our healing might not come within the time period that we think it's going to come, but God is an on-time God. So he may not come when you want him, like the old people used to say, but he's going to be there right on time. But I feel like, Pastor, I need to come a little bit closer to somebody your daughter's age. And I know a lot of times in church, we shout over certain things. We shout over all these different moments, and we have these moments where we, as adults, are encouraged and are strengthened. But it's harder for somebody that is a young person that is going through the season of having bad days and good days. And what I simply want to tell you, if you're going through that process, is just simply trust God. Like literally just lay it at God's feet. Like be like, God, I don't know what you're doing in this season, but I just believe that you're going to be able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all can I ask or think. God, I know that you're greater than anything that I can even face. Whether it's in school, whether it's a health condition that you're going through, God is greater than it all. So it's not just something cliche that we say from week to week, or it's not something that we just hear repeatedly through conversations, but it's something that we have to really believe and have a true full understanding that God is able to do this, and not just, oh, this is the churchy thing to say. No, this is what God is able to do because we have seen people healed. Listen, when I tell you I have seen people healed and I heard about people being healed around me, I knew that God was able to heal me. I knew that God was able to deliver me. So there was no worries, no stress in my mind, because I knew that if God was able to do it for Susie, that
Yes.
God was in the neighborhood and that he could do it for little old me, Christian. I knew that it might not be in the same amount of window that it might happen for somebody else, but that maybe God was using my story, my experience for his glory. And so don't be upset at the process and how long it takes for you to be able to get your deliverance. Just be grateful that you have your deliverance. And just be grateful that God has been supplying and continues to keep you each and every single day. Like I say all the time, my body might be filled with pain, but I know that God is greater than my pain. I know that God is greater than anything that I will face in my life. And I know that even though I've walked through this valley of shadow of death, even though I've walked and seen death, literally look death right in his eye, I knew that God was greater than any of it. So whenever people would say, hey, I don't think that you're going to make it through the situation, I said, I believe in a God that is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all we can ask or think.
Christian, I want to say thank you so very much. I want to say thanks, and I don't think I think we should invite Christian back
I think
because
so too.
I want what I really wanted to do, Christian. I wanted to bring Ari on halfway through, and then for you both to talk to each other.
I would love that.
Yeah, I wanted to do that, but we didn't. I wasn't. It's my fault, and she had school tomorrow and all of that. So but we'll get to it because
For sure.
She's an hour ahead of us. So, but Christian, I want to tell you thanks so much from the bottom of my heart. My mother-in-law said, you're teaching us adults how to be patient. Teaching us how to be patient. And a lot of lessons were taught tonight. So I want to tell you thanks on behalf of our ministry for coming on. We're so grateful. Sister Chambers, who's going through a whole lot right now, is telling you thank you. And so we're really grateful to you. But let's see who won our gift for tonight, Anna Kay. And before we leave, we're trying to get Christian a nice graduation present, and we're only at $150. So if somebody could please add
Bless
to that.
this young man.
Bless this. That's right. Oh,
Cheryl
Sister Sands, you are our winner tonight. Sister Sands, you are our winner tonight. Sister Sands, would you fill out? You know how to fill out the necessary paperwork, and Sister Fagan will get your gift card right over to you so you can head over to KW Ministries and shop. And I'm sure Kamal already told you all how to shop. But tonight we're focusing on Christian.
Yes.
All right. So please, we're kind of asking you, please take out your cash apps before we go one last time. And please bless this young man that God has blessed and that has. What's next, Christian?
Well, what's next? Listen, like I said, Pastor, I'm not trying to plan God's move, but I believe that God has something great in store for me. I have an interview this week with a team out in Denver. So I'm anticipating a mighty move of God with that. With doing broadcast maintenance, which is something I'm very, very passionate about. So if the believers can just keep a brother lifted, that would be great this week.
Well, we'll be praying for you, Christian, and we don't want to just pray for you. We want to believe with you that God is going to continue to do abundantly, exceedingly.
Thank you for sharing you. We don't know the full extent of the impact that we're going to have on people's lives, especially in a format like this. But I can guarantee, I'm going to go ahead and guarantee it, 100% guarantee that you have touched somebody's life in a way that they had no way of anticipating tonight. So I want to thank you for that.
Well, I know for sure that you have touched Sister Chambers' life. Sister Chambers is going through a lot of stuff right now that she doesn't quite understand yet. And when she hears stories like yours, and see, the unique thing about what I love about Christian is he could have used the excuse, I can't go to school because I have this. Right? And once he got to school and 2020 came, he could have said, well, I tried. And Crohn's messed me up. It would have been a good story. I tried. You'd have been a hero. I tried. But you didn't stop. You said God had a vision for you. God told you he had a plan for you, and you allowed God to carry that plan out. Thank you very much, sir. We are very grateful that you came on. Let's keep in touch so we can have you on again.
For sure. I just want to leave one last thing with somebody. When you can't understand, trust his plan. Just trust his plan. Trust his plan. And just know. Just claim his promises, believe and know that he's still God. He's still God. And he does not hear your prayer. He's not ignoring your prayer. It's just that he knows that if he delivers you too early, that you account it to your own doing. But he knows that if he lets you go through this season of hard times, that you will say it was only but the Lord who's done this. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know what he did. I don't know how he made the way, but it was a God thing. And so that's what I tell people all the time. My story, it's just a God thing.
I love
it's
it.
just how he made a way when there seemed to be no way, how he provided for me, how he opened doors for me, how I walked across the stage on Saturday night, it was a God thing. And so because God is in the blessing business, and because God is able to do so much greater than I can even ask or think, I just have to give the glory back to him because it's just a God thing.
Thank you so much, Christian.
So into this young man's life.
Please do.
Hashtag CJ Lawson.
That's right. Next week, Kayla is coming back next week.
All
We're going
right.
to talk some more about sex.
Yes, we are.
All right. And then Pastor Quinn Cousins join us. And you want to be here for Pastor Cousins. I know you're going to be here next week because you just enjoyed that conversation so much. But you want to be here for Pastor Cousins' conversation. Pastor Cousins is legally blind. And he went through, he was at Oakwood when I went through Oakwood. And now he's a well-in-demand preacher of righteousness, pastors the church, has a beautiful wife, and I can't wait for us to talk with him. Then after Pastor Cousins, Dr. Lakeisha Williams is going to sit with us and talk. We went to Pine Forge together, and ever since I met her in 11th grade at Pine Forge, I have respected the ground that woman walks. And she's now the principal of Oakwood Academy. And she's had some amazing things that has happened to her, from her basketball team to losing her dad. You want to be here for Dr. Williams. And then Lorraine Mendez will talk with us. And we're just going to have a family conversation. That's my cousin. We're all the same age. And we're just going to talk about these kids that we're raising. Our kids are about the same age. And you don't want to miss that conversation as we talk about the struggles of raising teenagers. Then Sister Velvet Stokes will be with us, and she has another powerful story about recovery and God's healing power. And then Dr. Washington will join us again for part 2. So the next several weeks will be exciting, will be fun, will be informative, will be life-changing. Kamala, if it's Monday night, then what?
Live with KW.
Peace, y'all. Thanks, Christian.